appreciated. Hisham, I suppose you'll show my slides, right? Okay. So, although I worked in Oman, Bangladesh, and few other countries, mostly in South Asia and Middle East, I will confine my talks to what is happening in India. Because in India, there's a peculiar situation that we have a huge budget of $3 trillion only of central federal government for infrastructure projects. There is a high-speed rail, there are four other bullet trains announced, and so on. And there's a huge capacity deficit, both in terms of project management and in terms of contracts. Just to give you an example, I think the entire India with 1.5 billion population has just got, I think, 8 FIDIC certified people, three trainers, two contract managers, and maybe two, three adjudicators. So here, because of this, there are a lot of things that one has to cater for and sometimes take innovative measures. So I'll just do case studies rather than going into anything else. Next, please. Hisham, can we have the next slide? So this is a problem that we are facing in India. There is a huge capacity problem with engineering firms who act as engineers. Mostly these are called project management consultants in India. There is a huge capacity deficit of DABs and even arbitrators who understand construction well. Legal setup is a problem area in terms that there are delays of 10 years, 15 years, and so on. So that's a little problem. And even among the legal system, you don't have anything called a TCC like in UK. So there are no specialized courts. Culturally, there is a problem. There are too much of adversarial attitudes among the contractor and the employer, especially public sector employers. And there's a lack of exposure of each other's roles in the sense that a person who is in public sector will remain in public sector throughout his life. He will never see corporate life. I was one of the few exceptions who left after chief engineer, went as VP of a corporate firm. Very few people do that. So they don't appreciate each other's constraints well. Now, let's understand how this translates into when we are administering FIDIC contracts. FIDIC contracts are mostly administered in India for all MDB-aided projects, World Bank, ADB, and JICA, Japanese International Consortium Agency. Hisham, next, please. Okay, great. So let's understand firstly public sector employees because majority of FIDIC contracts in India are by government, are being implemented in government projects. Now there are few private projects which are coming, and I was pleasantly surprised to see one real estate project happening on FIDIC where they wanted training from me. But majority are public sector government projects and very, very large infrastructure projects, bullet train, metros, etc. Next, please. Yeah. So some of the problems that happen with infrastructure issues are, firstly, most of the employers who are implementing government projects are what we call as project implementing agencies. These themselves are agencies like Public Works Department, railways, who constitute of qualified engineers. The engineers and mostly people in these agencies are themselves very qualified engineers. Technically, they are quite good. There is an acute shortage of government staff because everywhere there is cost cutting, and keeping a permanent government staff is a huge problem in terms of perks and pensions and whatever. There is a huge, very, very big audit and vigilance which goes on for every expenditure that you do, to the extent that an engineer is at times mortally scared to give a variation. There is a problem of and contract managers. There is every such projects have political issues. So there are political problems to complete project earlier. Time frames are not given realistically. Professor Bent Freiberg took a recent talk on this as how optimism bias and various other things, strategic misrepresentation. And there is also a political pressure not to penalize the contract. That's a little problem. Uh, then you have a problem from judicial and arbitrators who generally treat government agencies as, big bad brothers. Legal professional advice law firms is excessively focused on client protection and not on project benefit. There is a lack of training on FIDIC, with people mixing up various clauses with their bespoke contracts because of mindsets. And less corporate exposure of public sector employees. In fact, nil, I would say. How does this now translate into projects? I'll give you by some examples and case study. Next, please. So one is there is an excessive tendency to select silver book. Why? Because the government engineer or the employer wants to protect himself by giving disclaimers in everything. Because what happens is if a site data has considerable errors, suddenly a vigilance guy will start an inquiry on it. So might as well play it safe, put a disclaimer, take a silver book, put everything on the contract. There is a flouting of golden rules. I'll show you which are the ones which are flouted maximum. And since there is a lack of faith in the uh, power of, in the competence of engineers, engineers means a project management consultant who act as engineers for FIDIC, there is a huge tendency to curb the engineer's powers. No variation can be given without employer's consent. No EOT can be given without employer's consent, and so on. And in the end, however, and I'll show you by this example, the price is always and always paid by the employer. Next, please. So let's discuss three issues, which, based on the example, which I've currently faced, and the need wherein I had to take some innovative measures. Let's go the first. Next, please. Hisham, next, please. Yeah, next, please. So there's a huge project going on tourism department, which is going to be inaugurated by the Prime Minister subsequently after 2-3 years. And this department had very less experience of designing, planning. So scope of project like any other thing, museum, sound light, etc., etc. Very intricate archaeological work with huge amount of stonework, 50 different types of stones. Next, please. Kishan, next, please. Yeah, this is the project which is going on. It's going on right now. Next. I'm the contract advisor for this tourism department now. Next, please. So when this project started sometime in 2022 end, this tourism department hired a law firm, and the advice given by a very famous law firm was, you don't have experience, use silver book, since you don't have experience of much of construction project. And in India, generally, contractors will not be in a position to build in a risk contingency, that is bid high, because there's excessive competition. So nobody is going to bid high. Don't worry about that. Remove entitlement of profit. Remove contractors' right to suspend, client protection. Remove entitlement to cost for delayed possession of site. Give only EOT. So that's the advices which is often given by law firms. Add concurrent delay clause after the Sidon Homes, court case, Sidon Homes versus North Midland. This is becoming very popular, that right in contract in special conditions, contractor will not be given any EOT for concurrent delay because it's legally tenable. In Sidon Homes, it was taken as legally tenable. Next, please. Yeah. So net result, what happened was reputed firms didn't respond. The advice given by law firm, relaxed pre-qualification criteria. These people are doing cartelization. So pre-qualification criteria relaxed. A local contractor came, couldn't perform, contract terminated after 6 months. And that is the time when I came into the picture. Next, please. So we said, let's revisit what are the characteristics of this project. It's a very intricate archaeological project. Employer would want close supervision, but he doesn't have the staff. There are huge chances of variation because the nature of project is such that you generally keep looking at various things when you're doing such complex aesthetic projects. And the cost of stone sculpturing is going to vary too much, which no cost indices, published cost indices can capture. It is impossible, especially in India where government publishes the cost indices. So everything of these stones would probably be clubbed as other material. So whether you have an aggregate or you have an intricate stone, cost index will remain same. So we said, let's first use the yellow book. But we wanted to make changes for these various uncertainties in yellow book because we felt even that was not enough. Next session, please. So we said we need to de-risk the contractor more so that best guys respond and there are no disputes. So we took some cues from Emerald book. We made a baseline report. Instead of a GBR, we made a baseline report for the stones. So a range of data for the stones. which is a predictable data where the fixed lump sum cost of yellow book comes in. And then we divided this BOQ into installation and material cost. So anything that goes beyond that range of data, you lower or you give the cost to the contractor. And this cost would be linked to market indices, which the quantity surveyor of the engineer had to monitor all time, and not any government published indices. So in fact, this is one of the best method which I find, that when there is a huge amount of uncertainty, have two things: early contractor involvement and a GBR or a baseline report. Another thing which I am doing is, of course, is pain gain sharing, which we are working out how to do for unforeseen conditions. But we have started with early contractor involvement, with even reimbursement to the unsuccessful bidders for their effort, and a baseline report. That I found is two best methods for uh, unforeseen conditions, whether they are geotechnical or whether they are these kind of conditions. Next, please. Handling of concurrent delay, we changed it. We took Malmaison approach, EOT and no cost, because again, there is a problem of specialists in India, so you don't go in for too much of delay analysis and all that. So we said, let's write in the contract that EOT and no cost, instead of going in for dominant cause, apportionment, which will lead to huge problems. We also found in India a very surprising thing, that this was a 99 contract, that adjudication and avoidance skills are a little separate. And people who had adjudication skills did not have the skills of avoidance. So we appointed, in fact, I was this guy, standing mediator and dispute avoidance expert, in addition to a DAB 99 contract. The aim was, even why should things go up to DAB? If things can be amicably settled before the DAB, why not? Beyond the engineer. Engineer has not been able to do amicable settlement, but people are dissatisfied. So before the DAB, another step with an expert for amicable settlement. Now, of course, this is amalgamated in DAB, but this is an issue which I found in India, that avoidance needs a little different skills than adjudication. We gave lots of incentives which are not found in contract. Because again, as I told you, because of political pressure, because of various things, to penalize a contractor, let's say to deduct some interim, keep an interim amount holding under 14.6 because he is not submitting a revised program, is very difficult in India. So we said, why not go in for something else? Instead of giving penalties, LDs, everything, why not go in for huge amount of incentives? And for the engineer also. So we said, let's have, say, a bonus for early completion, which we generally find in most contracts. Let's have a bonus if the value of defects is very less at the end of the project, less than 1%. Let's have a bonus incentive if the contractor submits a realistic program every month, which the engineer does not object to and which is found, updated and realistic. So we had an incentive for that. Currently, FIDIC caters only for a penalization if the contractor does not submit a revised program under 14.6, where you can penalize or you can withhold this payment for not fulfilling any contractual obligation. Next, please, Shisham. So net result of this became very positive. We had reputed firms selecting, coming for the contractor. It was not an L1, it was a QCBS selection of contractor. And the net result was that not even one single case went to DAB. Everything was done by the dispute avoidance and the little bit of mediation which we had earlier. And the incentives played a huge kind of motivation for the contractor and the engineer to arrive every time at an accepted program, and for the contractor to do good workmanship of defects during the project going on. And the net result of this project was 1% cost overrun, 3 months delay because of floods, and not even one case went to DAB. Everything was done by the neutral expert, which happened before the DAB, the mediator come avoidance. So we found this as a very positive thing, giving a lot of incentives, having early contractor involvement, having a baseline report, whether it is for ground conditions or something which is anything which is very uncertain, and these kind of innovative things, which do go along with FIDIC. I'm sure such innovative things don't in any way flout golden principles of FIDIC. They are, in fact, improvement to the extent of motivating the contract. Next, please. Yeah, I have 5 minutes. This is the statue which has been completed. Now the museum is going on. Next, please. The next issue was the program which I told you. One of the next, please. Now we all know what FIDIC has in the program, and incidentally, this is a very tall order. If you take C, it means that for a 3-year project, the contractor should have planned in quite a bit in detail about every kind of activity that he's doing. When is he going to procure, with whom, from whom, and so on. Now, obviously, in the initial program, this will be simply an estimate. Nobody can really realistically plan that after 2.5 years, I'm going to procure something from this supplier and it will come on site on so and so date. So it will be more of a something like a level 2 kind of a schedule which PMP says, giving broad milestones and how you're going to attend, not a level 4 initial program. May not go into so much detail because it's quite difficult. Next, please. Yeah, so we all know what FIDIC wants under the program. And unfortunately, we do have a lack of capacity of project management in India where people are not able to give such a detailed initial program, or what we often call as baseline schedule in PMP. Next, please. Next, please. So now, one of the problems we found was, let's go next, please. Okay, this is the problem that we face with program in almost every project in India. The engineer says that I keep telling the contractor he doesn't submit realistic programs, especially the revised one. Baseline program, the initial schedule, initial program you still get, revised you don't get. There are projects where after 7-8 months you don't have a schedule, or there are projects where the observations of the engineer on the program are moving 2 and 4 for 1 year. The project has moved 1 year ahead. Observations are still going on the initial program. Employers generally do not permit withholding of payment under 14.6 because there are pressures not to withhold payment of the contractors. And obviously, human nature, no contractor is going to admit his own delay. So that's a human nature. Contractors' grievances that employer, the engineer never gives an NOC. And in 99, there's a problem because there's no deemed NOC. So there are observations floating to and fro for 6 months for 1 year. And just like the contractor doesn't show his delay, the engineer refuses to show the delay of the employer because he is an employer's agent other than for determination. And the employer's problem is that engineer's duty under FIDIC to review the program is too limited. He should be doing more. For example, he should be viewing whether the contractor is doing things in an optimal fashion with the best efficiency, which is incidentally is not an engineer's duty. His engineer's duty in FIDIC is only compliance with the contract. And he is not supposed to check whether the contractor is adopting best practices. The engineer has no contractual responsibility also because irrespective of his mistakes, the contractor bears responsibility. And he keeps giving observations after observations on the program because that's his job envisaged by FIDIC. His job is not to correct the program, but to give observations. And there is no consensus on the accepted program for years or for months altogether. So these are the grievances of all three. Next, please. So what we did was, here we did an innovative thing. We said, okay, let's have a project control officer, one of the employer, one of the engineer, and one of the contractor, all sitting in the same room with a shared Primavera and a shared BIM, 4D BIM, throughout the project. So all three were sitting in the same room, updating the program together throughout the project. And we made it a contractual clause that this is how things will happen in the special conditions. Next, please. The second was a bonus. That if the contractor gives a realistic program and over a period of 6 months, the engineer is satisfied, both of them get a bonus, an incentive. This worked very well in getting an updated realistic program. So a little innovative clause, not envisaged by FIDIC, which we had to adopt because penalties don't work. It didn't work in India. They don't work. And we were not getting a good program by the contractor. And the engineer was also not putting in his full effort to check, saying that his responsibility under FIDIC is only to check as far as contractual compliance is concerned and give observations. His responsibility is not to correct and sit down with the contract. That was the kind of things that were coming. Next. So last key point, since I'm almost nearing, is the issue of subcontractors. Next, please. So FIDIC envisages a very limited role for engineers as far as subcontractors is concerned. In broad, this is the limited role of engineer. He has to give consent to the subcontractor. He has to give consent to enter the site. And in nominated subcontractor, he may ask for evidence of payment and may be paid directly uh, only for nominated. But then there are many other contractors. In most public sector projects, the employer writes that if any subcontract value is more than 5% value, consent of the employer will be taken or an engineer will be taken. He's not a nominated subcontractor, but a consent will be taken broadly to see whether he's okay. That's what most people write. Even FIDIC guidance says that this is a common practice. Next. Okay. So one of the big problems in India and many developing countries is that we have no law for protection of subcontractors. We have something called a micro, small, and medium, MSME Act. But anybody who's not so small that he's a micro, medium guy, there is no law. So there is no Security of Payment Act. Pay if paid and pay when paid are very much allowed. A main contractor can write 90 days payment terms for a subcontractor, very much allowed. And some of the issues faced by subcontractors are these. Payment terms are pretty bad, 60 to 90 days. Main contractor often takes 10 to 15% retention money, whereas he's paying only 5% to the employer. Back-to-back clauses for damages. But when he gets a claim, that is not passed on to the subcontractor. The FIDIC subcontract manual is rarely used in India. I have not seen a single case, in fact. So some of the modifications we did was we said as an employer, we need to monitor subcontractors very well, especially the fact that they are being paid in time. So we said we will not only approve the subcontractor, we will also approve some major conditions that you are putting in subcontracting. And we wrote that as a special condition in the yellow book. Something akin to what NEC has, for example. So mandatory provisions. So we made a mandatory provision. Next slide, please. In the special condition of yellow book, that the main contractor will show evidence of payment to subcontractor within 1 week of his getting payment from the employer, failing which in the next interim payment certificate, the employer will pay the subcontractor directly and deduct from it. And this is not restricted to nominated subcontractors. This is for all subcontractors whose approval has been given by employer. They are not nominated. The main contractor will remit retention money to 5%. For example, in New York, you have a New York Prompt Payment Act where by law you can't take more than 5%. But in India, you don't have that. So these are kind of clauses which we had to innovate for FIDIC, which are an add-on and not flouting any golden principles anyway. The net result, next slide please, last one. So net result that we are coming to and which I keep advising in India is firstly, avoid silver book. Because in India, the problem is contractors are in no position to inbuilt a risk contingency. So you will still get a low bid on silver book, but the contractor will not be able to do the project. So as a result, your project is doomed. Second, employers need to take a very proactive approach to cater for the shortcomings of engineers, the project management consultancy firm, and sometimes, of course, curbing unethical practice. Incentivization, we felt, work better than penalties. If you take entire FIDIC or any other contract, there is only one incentivization, a bonus clause, which is also optional for early completion. Why not an incentivization for if the contractor does such a good work that there are hardly any defects? Why not if incentivization if the contractor follows some of the best project management practices? Why not an incentivization if the contractor willingly shows earned value analysis every month? So we found incentivization works very well. And this is my observation that while we are making DABs, DAABs, dispute avoidance skills are somewhat different from dispute adjudication skills. So there are many experts I found, not really DAB members, but who are in, not qualified DAB, but DAB members otherwise, because we have very less DAB qualified people in India, who are okay in dispute adjudication, but are not very good in dispute avoidance. They are not able to give correct advice, and sometimes they get biased by their own advice. That, look, I gave this advice, this party did not follow this advice. Now the case has come back to me on DAB, and there is a little bit of bias here. So we need to really have a look that every DAB member not only has adjudication skills, he also has avoidance skills, which sometimes may lead to different competencies. And we found surprisingly that mediators have better avoidance skills, people who are qualified mediators. Right. That's it, I think, last one. Yeah. So thanks a lot. This was to show how innovative measures we have to take in FIDIC in India to cater for shortcomings, to cater for an environment of vigilance, to cater for unethical practices also, but mostly shortcomings in capacity.